Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Just testing my speaker there, so make sure everything's working. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
All right.
Recording in progress.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Was there a roll of paper towels in here?
It's in here.
some crazy.
What did you guys hear about this class?
Company we work with.
Yeah,
Coworkers.
Yeah. Physics and thermodynamics. That's just peachy. Can I just minimize this window here?
have you guys gone for the test yet at all?
Nah,
No.
no, not yet, man. You?
Yeah, I studied out of the books for like a couple months and then I took the test and I was just a couple questions short of passing.
Yeah. So you took this exact course? Oh, just out of the books.
No, I was just reading books that I bought off the internet and then I went and took the Massachusetts test and I failed by like a couple points. I think it was like 6 points.
Really? That's it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you fail it, you can take the test.
You can take it.
as many times.
Can't, if you fail it, I'm pretty sure you can't take it for another 3 months.
It's actually 60 days.
60 days.
60 days.
Yeah.
All right.
And usually by the time you take the test, they notify you. A fair amount of time has already gone by, so it's not as long as it sounds.
I got you.
Yeah.
Is it a long test?
It's 50
Um,
multiple choice questions.
Oh, okay. Wow. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's no requirement that you go to school for this.
Yeah, I got you.
The difference is about 99.7% of my students get the license the first time.
I've been told to pay attention to the homework questions.
Really?
Yes, very, very closely.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Well, fuck me. So are you guys just taking it on your own, or are you doing it for work, or?
My work is paying
I'm
for it.
taking-
I got you.
Yeah, the smart people have somebody else pay for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But if you're really interested, then do it yourself. And some of us to only have that choice,
Yeah.
pay for it ourselves.
Yeah, I'm trying to switch careers.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
Why,
I got somebody out there that signed in as iPad, DMPZ.
Oh, that might be me.
Yeah, that is you. What's your real name? I know it's not
Jonathan.
iPad. Huh?
Jonathan. Stadnicki.
Okay. All right, Jonathan, I got you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it would be cruel to name your kid iPad, I think.
I'm sure somebody has.
Yeah, that'd be a little strange.
Yeah, we'll just give it another minute here before we get started. Make sure everybody has a chance to get here. All right, well, we might as well get started. Welcome. My name's Tom Walker. I'm the instructor here at the Peterson School. I've been with the Peterson School for 29 years now. Retired from this industry from the Brayton Point power plant down in Fall River. I retired back in 2013. I'm a first engineer. Enough about me, let's talk about you. All right. Charles Amico, are you out there?
Yeah, right here.
What brings you to this exciting location tonight?
Well, I work in the facilities department at McLean Hospital and hoping to move up. So
Now,
gonna
do
start
they have a
taking some
boiler room
classes.
there?
They do have a boiler room. Yep.
Okay. So that's a good as plan as any I've heard so far. Good luck to you.
Thanks.
Deverton, are you out there?
Yeah, my name's Deverton.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
Yeah. I've been paving roads for over 10 years now, and my body's I've split a rib, so it's kind of time to make a career change because paving's not it anymore. So yeah, I have a buddy that's his family is like well up in the boiler industry, and he told me about it, and I started looking into it, and I was pretty interested. So
All right. Sounds like a good plan. Good luck to you.
thank you.
Alexander Dern.
Yep, I'm right here. I work in kitchens. I'm just tired of working 12-hour days. I was on my feet, like nonstop, moving the entire time.
Well, I'm glad you added that because I was going to mention that a lot of the shifts in this industry are 12 hours.
Yeah, well, 6 to 6.
Yeah. But you can do most of it sitting down.
Yep.
So, yeah, I suppose it's a little different than running around a kitchen.
Yep.
All right. Well, good luck to you.
Thank
How about Jeff? What is it? Hearns or Hyons?
The Tyrants.
Hirons. Okay.
Yeah, I work in a kitchen too. I've been an executive chef, and it's just, my I'm just tired of working with customers and stuff. And my brother-in-law, he does this. He's a second engineer, and his daughter's fiance just took this course last year. So he told me.
Who's that?
What's that?
What's her name?
What's her name?
Yeah.
Her name is Kayla Archambault.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So that's interesting. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Tom Hunter.
Yep, I'm a maintenance worker at a Maytap in Boston right now.
I'm familiar with some of the crew up there. Do you know any of the operators?
Yeah, Brian warned me about you, Brian Knudsen.
Yeah. We used to call Brian Chief Dark Cloud. He tripped the whole plant one time at Brayton Point. So tell him that story. Tell him I said hello.
Cool.
Was there a kid Arvello there too?
Sorry?
Joe Arvello?
Oh.
You remember
I'm
him?
not sure.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, good luck to you. What are you trying to get into operations or?
Yeah, potentially if the opportunity arises.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Mike Johnson.
Yeah, that's me. How you doing? I work at Leahy Hospitals right now, significantly Beverly and Addison Gilbert. My brother just took his second engineer's class, I believe, or second fireman's. So yeah, I'm just looking to get out of basically maintenance itself and move into the boiler room full time.
Excellent. Excellent plan. I highly recommend it. All right. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Stephen Medor or Medor.
Right over here. How you guys doing? I've been working in the management field. It's Stefan Medor. Managing people, nonstop calling. When you're home, your phone keeps blowing up. I was talking to one of my friends about career, and then he suggested to try to fireman engineering. So I looked into it and signed up, hoping to have a career change.
All right. It sounds like a good plan as well. All right. Jason Pepper.
Yeah, right here. I work for Aramark. I'm plant maintenance manager.
I'm taking the class and getting a license, so I've got a major shortage going on, so I figured this was one of the ways to help with that shortage.
There you go. All right, solve your own problem, huh?
Yes, correct.
All right, and you're with Michael, what is it, McEachern or McEachin?
McEachran.
McEachern, sorry.
That's all right. So I was an iron worker for 13 years. I work under Jason now for Aramark, maintenance tech. Been doing that for 4 months. And like Jason said, we got a shortage of boiler guys. So they offered to pay for the course, so I know it's a good field to get into.
Excellent. All right, well, good luck to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. How about Jonathan?
How you doing?
All right.
I'm a maintenance manager at New England Sheets in Devons. We've got a boiler there, and I'm going to help out with crewing there and make sure we've got that staffed at all times. And you know, it might not be a bad thing for me to do when I retire. I think I'd like to do it for you know, at least part-time work.
So you're up at Fort Devens, you said. Are you familiar with a company named West Rock up there?
Yep, that's one of our sister companies.
Yeah, I did a course up there about 3 years ago and trained all the maintenance mechanics to be firemen.
Yeah.
And guess what all the maintenance men did?
Left and went to go work for like NRG.
They went and got jobs as boiler operators.
Yep.
Because they were tired of working so hard. So, yeah. So, well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. Is it Iabel?
Yes, Yobel.
All right.
Yeah, I work for a Harvard University. They're like mail and distribution. It's also kind of like a physical job too as well. And so, yeah, I was looking for another career change too as well within Harvard.
Yep.
And they have those positions available. And I think they have a lot of buildings that they're building. So I'm assuming that they're gonna have more opportunities for people to.
Yeah, absolutely. You get in the power plant there, you basically died and went to heaven. That's a good thing. And yeah, there's some really good jobs in this industry. So, well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, Ed Brazel.
That's me. Yes, I'm just studying to go to my thirds, third engineer, and I got my second fireman's. Family's been in the industry for quite a while. Dad's a thirds. My grandfather was a union rep for the firemen, so just kind of felt like the job to go towards. And I work currently at Saints Low General and Saints campus, so which I am currently calling from at the moment. So yeah, that's kind of my spiel, and I just want to go up in the business, and it's good business.
Yeah, I think is your dad Ed Brazel too?
Same name, yeah.
Yeah. He was with one of the jails, right?
Yeah, the correctionals in Billerica.
Correction, yeah. Tell him I said hello.
I will.
All right, and good luck to you. All right, Matt O'Neill.
How you doing?
All right.
Been doing this for about 20 years as an operator. Currently at Rhode Island State Energy Center in Johnston, Rhode Island. And I've always either worked in Connecticut or Rhode Island, so I didn't need a state license. So looking to broaden my horizons in the Commonwealth.
All right. Do you have the Rhode Island license?
No, you only need it in the city of Providence or the
Right.
city of Woonsocket.
Yep.
So if you work anywhere else, you don't need it.
Yep. Now, I worked at Manchester Street Station for a number of years in Providence, and they made me get the Rhode Island license. And if you had that, it might make the transition a little bit easier for you, but you've got a lot of experience, it sounds like, so it shouldn't be a problem.
I hope not.
All right. Well, good luck to you. Danny Branco.
Yep, that's me. Been in the trade for about 15 years now. Work for a Kushner company, and I'm looking to progress up my licenses to eventually get to my second engineers and take over as the chief at ball plant 3.
There you go. You're going right for the top spot, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, good man. That's a man after my own heart. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So let's talk about what's going on here. I know some of you, know a little bit about this business. I'll try to go through it here, bring you up to speed. What you're getting involved in. This class prepares you to take the state exam. The state exam is given every month on the last Wednesday of the month. All right, and that's for all levels of the license, second fireman, all the way up to first engineer. All right. The test is given by boiler inspectors in the state of Massachusetts that work for the Department of Fire Services. They do boiler inspections, pressure vessel inspections. They issue certificate of inspections, and they examine you for your license. So that's what you're going for. Second fireman, you take a 50-question multiple choice test. First fireman, it's 60 questions, multiple choice. And for third engineers, it's 20 essay type questions. Everybody has to pass the written test and proceed to the next step, which is an oral exam, where you meet with the inspector one-on-one. And hopefully at that time, they give you a license. This is one of the few industries that at that oral exam, they'll hand you the license and you're free to go get a job, start working in the industry rather immediately. So that's how quick it can happen. Right now, there's about 5,000 people in the entire state involved in this industry, either as firemen or engineers. There's also a pretty big group of special licenses. They can only operate the boilers at their specific plant. But there's been a license law in Massachusetts since 1895. So, and it's looked upon favorably by other states. So people with a Mass license usually don't have any trouble getting a job in other states, even in states where there is no license requirement. I think, I don't know if I put this page in your book, but there's a woman here up at the Department of Fire Services, Maria Pereira. That's her phone number. If you ever have any problems scheduling an exam or any questions about that whole process, she's the person that'll help you out. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, there are 8 districts in Massachusetts. If you work in this industry, they'll assign you an inspector closest to where you live. However, if you work in the industry, you're already a fireman or an engineer, then they'll assign you a district inspector closest to where you work. So that's how that works. And we'll talk more about this later on. Last night, I think I sent you a schedule for the class. Did everybody get that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
This is basically just going to show you the topics we'll cover each class. You're signed up for the night class, but you have the ability, if there's a conflict, to attend the day class as well. All you have to do is call Stacy up and she'll give you the link to pop into the day class so you can bounce between the classes. Probably the best aspect of this, after every class, they will mail you the video of this class. All right. So you can watch it at your leisure. What I recommend is that you save that video to your hard drive, create a file for it, and save it. Otherwise, I think it has a shelf life and it will disappear from your computer at some point in the future. Does everybody kind of get that? So if you ever have a question, you can review the video from that particular class. Also, if you can't make it to class, you can drop me an email and say, hey, Tom, I'm not going to make it. I'll watch the video and I'll mark you as present for the class. Does everybody kind of follow that? If you don't do that, I have no way of knowing if you if you did that, and I'll mark you as absent. So that's all. As far as the class format goes, on Wednesdays, I will always give you a homework assignment. Typically 15, 20 questions. I take the questions right off the state exam. All right. So if you study the homework questions, you'll pass the test and get the license. Does everybody kind of follow that? Yesterday, I sent you homework number 1. Did everybody get that as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
That'll be due Monday. On Mondays, the first thing we will do is review those questions. All right. I don't collect them. All right. This isn't junior high. I'm not going to collect them. I take it on good faith that you're going to do them because you're here and you want to get the license. In fact, every Monday, I'm going to send you the answers to the homework. So you'll have them, form a database for which you can study. All right. There are tests. We'll have 2 quizzes, a midterm and a final. Just like anyway, you got to get a 70% to pass, just like the state exam. The test for the second fireman will be set up in exactly the same format as the state exam, multiple choice questions. All right. So it'll feel very familiar to you when you go take the state test. For the third engineers, the people going for the higher licenses, you will continue after the firemen are done here for 3 more weeks. All right. And your classes are set up in a PowerPoint format that I'll send to you before you need them so you can review them and print them out. So that's what happens for the guys going for the higher licenses. At the end of that, there's a couple of emails, one at school, one at home. You can get a hold of me. But of course, you can just respond to the emails that I already sent you. So I think most of you have got that figured out. All right. I don't think your book has this, but this is the schedule of when they give the test for the remainder of this year. For the second fireman, it looks like the best time for you to take the test would be the last Wednesday in December. All right. That's when this stuff will be freshest in your mind and you'll be best prepared. All right. In order to sit in that test, your application has to be on their desk by November 25th. So long before that happens, we'll talk about this. I'll send you an application that you can fill out and mail in. The only way they accept it is by mail in. All right. And it's going to cost you $100 to take the test. Any questions? All right. Right now, they're offering the written test only in Stowe, Mass. All right. They promised me sometime this year that they're going to start offering the test in Bridgewater as well at a new facility they've built there, and it's already up and operating. So maybe you won't have to go all the way out to Stowe, Mass. For some of you, it might be close to go to Stowe, Mass. I don't know where you live, but does everybody kind of get this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Any questions? All right, then. All right, well, let's get going here. Probably one of the more important documents that you're going to be exposed to here is Chapter 146. Think of it as the rules and regulations of the business. And what they require from you is that you have a working knowledge of chapter 146. So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to highlight a lot of the things they ask about on the state exam and try to familiarize you with this document. And again, you have all these pages in that binder. Section 1 really only has a couple of definitions that are important. The first one, of course, or actually the second one, is the definition of a boiler. And the last one is the definition of a pressure vessel. All right. On the following page, I put those two definitions in a format that's easy to understand and closely resembles the way they ask these questions on the state exam. So you can see that a boiler is a closed vessel in which water under pressure is transformed into steam by the application of heat. All right, that's a definition of a boiler. A pressure vessel, and I'm sure you've all seen pressure vessels like compressed air tanks, deaerators. All right, a pressure vessel is a closed vessel in which the source of pressure is external to itself. All right, in this business, if it's not a boiler, then it's considered a pressure vessel. All right, does everybody kind of get that? Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. All right. Section 1A, I didn't give to you. They just changed this rule, but I thought it was interesting enough that I'd tell you about it. Section C says boiler inspectors can now carry firearms. If you don't think that's ridiculous, then maybe you don't find that as funny as I do, but yeah, they need a firearm as much as you and I need a horse, I think. But for the third engineers, section 2 is important. They talk about a group of guys within chapter 146, the Board of Boiler Rules, and they review everything that happens in this business. What they want a third engineer to know is who is on the Board of Boiler Rules. And the one thing they're most interested in is Ed Cower, who's the chief of inspections. He's the chairperson or chairman of the Board of Boiler Rules. Section 6 applies to everybody in this business. And if you've been around boilers, you could probably relate to this. What it says is all boilers have to be inspected internally and externally every year. All right. That means the internal inspection is done while the boiler is shut off, typically during an outage or overhaul. All right. And one inspection is done while the boiler is steaming. So technically it's 2 inspections, one when the boiler is operating and one when the boiler is offline. All right. This has to be done every year, although they say under special circumstances, you can be given a 6-month extension if your company's busy and you can't afford to take the boiler out at its designated time. All right. One other thing, the last paragraph of this section tells us the first inspection done on any boiler or pressure vessel brought into the Commonwealth has to be done by the state. All right. So the state boiler inspectors have to see it the first time. Typically after that, most of you will have insurance company inspectors, boiler inspectors that work for insurance companies like FM Global. And they'll be the guys that come around most of the time. One of the questions that comes out of this on the state exam, what's the maximum interval there can be between boiler inspections? Well, if
18
it's,
months.
say it again,
18 months.
18 months is exactly right. It's that simple. You can go a year and you can get a 6-month extension. So that's how they position that on the state exam. After most of these important sections, I put a summary of what it really says. For instance, for this boiler inspection thing, I thought this would be easy for you to remember. Now, what's important here is that you understand the difference between a high pressure boiler and a low pressure boiler. All right. Any boiler operating over 15 PSI is considered a high pressure boiler. You need a license to operate it. Anything 15 PSI or under is a low pressure boiler. And the rules here don't apply. All right. So it tells us all boilers over 15 PSI have to be inspected internally and externally every year. The external inspection shall be done while the boiler is steaming, and you can get up to a 6-month extension. And that pretty much sums up anything they can ask you about that section. Any questions? Good. Now, a couple other things, or another term I think I should mention to you. When you get your second fireman's license, you actually become a boiler operator. All right. Every boiler operation has to have a person in charge. Officially, that person is called the engineer in charge. Most of us know that guy or that person as the chief engineer. How many of you have probably heard that expression? Yeah. The chief engineer. All right. The chief engineer, it would be his responsibility to notify the state that it's time for a boiler inspection. And this is the form that he would use. All right. All the forms in this business are available on the DFS, that's Department of Fire Services website. So you can just print them out. If you're technically savvy, you can scan it and email it to them. You don't have to mail it by snail mail. There is a whole bunch of boilers that are exempt from inspection. All right. You don't need to know this list. It's just interesting to know that low pressure boilers, boilers in private residences, all right, don't require inspection. Probably the one thing that stands out on this list is the fact that boilers under the jurisdiction of the US government are exempt from Massachusetts law. That means boilers on military bases like Hanscom, boilers in federal buildings, federal courthouses, federal buildings, or any company that has a government contract, such as Natick Labs. They're considered a government facility. They make those meals for the military out there in Natick. So just be aware of the fact that, you know, some boilers skate around the law. All right. The one thing they want everybody to know is the boilers have to be inspected. All right. And they have to be issued a certificate of inspection. All right. Later on, we'll talk about the certificate of inspection. It has to be posted in the boiler room or in the engine room where it can be easily read by everybody. It's got to be out in the open. Anybody working in a boiler plant has seen these certificates of inspection. You can't keep it in a file cabinet or in the office. It's got to be out in the open where everybody knows what's going on. Section 9, its only real intent is to familiarize you with a term that's widely used in this industry, safe working pressure. That is often called the MAWP, maximum allowable working pressure. Every boiler or pressure vessel is rated for a maximum pressure. All right. Common sense tells us that we're never going to operate the boiler or a pressure vessel at a pressure higher than that. Everybody gets that, I think, right? When the inspector comes to do the external inspection, one of the questions on the state exam is, what is he looking for? He's going to walk around a boiler that's operating. Well, this section tells you he's going to look at the pressure that the boiler is running at, the devices that indicate the water level. You and I know those as the water column and the gauge glass. Make sure they're not leaking or they're not valved out. He might have you test the safety valves to make sure they're working. But everybody gets the idea. He's just looking at the boiler to make sure it's in a safe operating condition. All right. I think everybody here has heard of safety valves. Is that a big yes or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Safety valves are typically, they look like this for the most part. They're placed on every pressure vessel and boiler. All right. They're designed to release excessive pressure. If the pressure starts to get higher than the MAWP, the safety valve will open and discharge the steam in a boiler, compressed air in a compressed air tank safely away from people, usually to the roof. All right. Well, hopefully nobody's up there sneaking a cigarette or whatever, because that would surprise the hell out of them. But they tell you, and again, this is common sense, don't play with this thing. Don't remove it, tamper with it. And of course, I don't think anybody was thinking about that anyway. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about safety valves. By the way, one of the questions on the state exam for just about every level of license, what is the most important valve or valves on a boiler? What do you think that would be?
Safety valve.
Safety valve. Yeah. So that's pretty much a gimme. All right. They want you to know that there's basically 3 types of boiler inspectors. The boiler inspectors that work for the state. Ironically, we know them as state inspectors. All right. The boiler inspectors that work for insurance companies, like I mentioned, FM Global. All right. They're known as insurance inspectors. And then large contractors or manufacturers often hire boiler inspectors as well. And they're known as shop inspectors. So to recap, the 3 categories are state inspectors, insurance company inspectors, and shop inspectors. Most of us, the only guy we'll see other than when we're taking a test is the insurance company inspector. They've got a vested interest in the equipment in your plant, and they're going to come around periodically and check it. There is one rule, administrative rule, they ask about boiler inspections. If they want you to do an internal boiler inspection where you have to shut down the boiler and open it up, they have to give you at least 14 days notice, 2 weeks. All right. However, they don't have to give you any notice to come in and do an external boiler inspection. All right. So that's one of the questions on the state exam, how much notice is required for an internal boiler inspection. You know, those of you that live here in Mass know that it's a bureaucratic state, and one of the things they do in this business is assign a number to every boiler and pressure vessel. And as a result, they have a tagging system. All right. That tagging system is known as the MS numbering system. MS stands for Mass Standard. The only interesting thing of this is those tags used to be nice brass tags, all right, attached with a chain. And they found out they were kind of collector's items. People were stealing them. So now they're kind of a chintzy plastic thing that nobody wants. So probably one of the more important items in here tonight is this one, section 27, that deals with the certificate of inspection. They want you to know what this document looks like and what information is contained on it. All right. It'll say the name of the owner or user. That's usually the company name. The location. No, that's the street address, city or town. The size and the number of the boiler. All right. What number do you think they're looking for when they say the number of the boiler?
The number that's issued to
MAWP.
them by the state.
Those are all good guesses. How many people have actually been in a boiler plant?
I have.
A typical arrangement, is there more than one boiler?
Yeah.
Why is that?
There's probably 6.
All right, well, let's not make it too complicated. But if you had 3 boilers, yeah, all the boilers can be connected to a common steam line called a header. All right. And if we were going to number these boilers, how would we do it?
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, and 3.
All right. Does everybody get it? So the number they're looking for is the number that you call it. All right. If you only have one boiler in your plant, do you think it's necessary to number it?
No.
No, of course not. All right. But the reason they have multiple boilers, all right, the biggest reason is we can't store steam. We have to make it on demand. All right. The second big reason is, especially in an industrial plant, a hospital, all right, we need backup. If there's a problem with the boiler, we got to have a backup plan, right? We can't tell the patients in a hospital, go home, or we can't shut down production because the boiler is not running. All right, everybody kind of gets this. All right, good. All right, so yeah, we call it. And to that guy that works in Rhode Island, I worked at Manchester Street Station and I left there because I actually thought the people in Rhode Island were crazy. And I'll tell you why. They had one elevator in the plant, and you know what they called it? Elevator number 3. The other thing they bothered me is they had 3 boilers. They called them units 9, 10, and 11. I thought that was rather complicated, kind of crazy. So
Manchester was renovated.
what's that, Matt?
It was, they refurbed it about 20 years ago. So I think it used to be, it was probably larger at one point, and then they redid it all 20, 25 years ago.
What are you talking about? Manchester Street Station?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went in there when they put the gas turbines in right after the refurbishing. That was in 95.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with that plan anyway, huh?
Yeah, I used to work for Dominion for a long time. They owned it for a while.
Okay, I retired from Dominion, Brayton Point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, good company.
where did you work?
Millstone in Connecticut.
Oh, okay. All
The
right.
new plant.
Oh, that's interesting. The other thing I didn't like about Rhode Island, the first week I was there,
The people?
The guys said to me, "Hey, we're gonna get pizza tonight. Do you like pizza?" I said, "Yeah, I like pizza." You know what their next question was? "Do you like cheese on it?" I said, "Well, without cheese, I don't think it really qualifies as pizza." And it turns out in Rhode Island, they sell this product that's dough with like spaghetti sauce on it, and they sell it in every freaking convenience store in Rhode Island.
You're at 7-Eleven, you can buy it.
Yeah, and I found out why. That cheese is a dairy product, and without cheese, it doesn't require that you refrigerate this stuff. So I learned a lot in Rhode Island, and anyway. So yeah, when they ask you, what do they mean? Whoops, by the number of the boiler. Hold on a minute here. They're looking for the number that you call it. The date of the inspection has to be on there, obviously, because it has to be done every year. The signature of the inspector, the MAWP. The certificate of inspection has to be located in the boiler room or the engine room where it can be easily read by everybody. One of the questions they love to ask second firemen, how do you know a boiler is safe to operate? And what they're looking for is that it has a valid certificate of inspection posted. All right, so you can see it, it's out in the open where it should be. Section 31 deals with something that's pretty common in this business, a hydrostatic pressure test. Has anybody heard of this? What do we do when we do a hydro?
Well, we're just we're filling up the boiler. We're going to be. Oh, this is from like the beginning. You're gonna open up all the vents, like the procedure. We're essentially stress testing the boiler to see if it can accommodate the pressure we're looking for.
Okay, and when you've seen this hydrostatic pressure test, at what pressure did they test the boiler at? Normal operating pressure?
1.5
No,
times.
I was gonna say 1.5. Yeah.
Yep, 1.5 times is an official hydro. All right. They're only gonna do that if you have extensive repairs done to the boiler. Otherwise, what we typically do is what we call a squeeze. Has anybody heard that term before?
Yep.
That's where we do the same thing as a hydro. We fill the boiler with water and pressurize it up to its normal operating pressure. All right. And that's what most of us will see in the course of our, careers, a squeeze. A full-blown hydro is a pretty rare thing. So if you've seen one of those, congrats, because you don't get to see those very often. Danny, you think you've seen a full-blown hydro? Or?
Oh yeah, we used to have those at CMAS all the time.
Oh, you worked at CMAS, yeah?
I did 8 years I was there.
Wow, that's like a sentence, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, for anybody getting into this business, one of the jobs that'll become available to you right away is a job at a trash plant. And all you need to do is talk to Danny. It's good experience. You learn a lot, but it's hard work. There's things always go wrong at a trash plant.
Yeah, I learned a lot while I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, I started up the CMAS waste energy plant back in '87. I didn't work for them. I worked for Bechtel at the time, but yeah, I didn't stay very long. I didn't like the smell of trash, but yeah, to do a full-blown hydro, this question often appears on the third engineer's exam. How would you perform a hydrostatic pressure test? All right. And this gives you that procedure. We'll go over this again as we move forward, but that's basically in there for the third engineer candidates. They ask that question a lot on the third engineer's test. Section 32 just reminds you, if you come across someone that says they're a state boiler inspector, you have to let them into the plant. They can go anywhere. A boiler is situated in Massachusetts. I think this is especially true today when you know they're carrying a gun. Let them in. Avoid the conflict, as they say. I don't know if one of the guys in my class is Jeff Lopez. I don't know if he's here.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. He works. You still work for National Grid, Jeff?
Yeah, I still work for National Grid.
Yep. And National Grid, I don't know if anybody knows, if you're driving up the expressway, if you're going towards Boston, there's a big gas tank that's painted. It's kind of a landmark. The National Grid plant is at the base of that plant. And basically what they do there is they take liquefied natural gas and vaporize it. And they had the unfortunate experience of not letting the boiler inspector into the plant one time. And security didn't get the program, didn't understand. So he refused to let the inspector in. Well, guess what? They finally get in and they wreaked havoc on the plant. They found out they had a number of violations. And it seems to me that everybody that works there has been paying for it.
Yeah, they revoked everybody's license.
What's that?
They revoked everybody's license and you had to go back to school.
Yeah. So they made it really hard. So the point is, don't prevent them from entering the plant. Let them in. The next section deals with compressed air tanks. The fortunate news here is there's only a couple of questions about compressed air tanks. In Massachusetts, compressed air tanks over 50 PSI have to be inspected every 2 years. All right. And of course, with that, they'll issue a certificate of inspection. So every compressed air tank that you have in your facility should have a certificate of inspection. They have one other question they ask about compressed air tanks. And this one's kind of a gimme for anybody that works in the industry. They ask, how would you prepare an air tank for an inspection? All right. And hopefully what you'd say is you'd shut it down, you'd isolate the air tank, take the pressure off it, open up the manholes or handholes, clean it out, and leave it in that condition for the inspector to come in and do his inspection. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? And that's all they ask about compressed air tanks. Because the boiler room is a great place to hide air compressors, compressed air tanks, and in many cases, chillers, refrigeration equipment, they often make operation of chillers the boiler operator's responsibility. So they have a couple of questions about chillers on the state exam. Refrigeration equipment over 20 tons has to be inspected every year. All right. 20 tons is not a real big unit. But the question that comes out of this, in addition to this, does anybody remember what a ton of refrigeration is? Well, if you've ever had one of those little air conditioners, you pop into a window that can cool a room. Typically, those are around 6,000 to 8,000 BTUs per hour. 1 ton of refrigeration is 12,000 BTUs per hour. And like many of the definitions we get in this industry, this is a holdover from the old days when air conditioning was simply taking a block of ice, a ton of ice, allowing it to melt, circulating that water through coils and blowing air across it with a fan. All right. As a result, they come up with this. A ton of refrigeration is the melting of 2,000 pounds of ice in 24 hours. All right. Since it takes 144 BTUs the latent heat of fusion to turn ice into water at 32 degrees. That results in 288,000 BTUs per day, divided by 24 hours in a day, 12,000 BTUs per hour. All right, so that's what a ton of refrigeration is. All right. Some of you might have already known that anyway.
Are they gonna ask about that? The
They do.
previous
They
slide?
ask you what's a ton of refrigeration. And you can give them the short answer because it's a multiple choice test, 12,000 BTUs per hour. The unfortunate thing is if you get that right, when you get to the oral, they'll say, where did they come up with that number? All right. So it's good that you have a little understanding of where the number comes from. Section 46 deals with the reason you're all here, the necessity of a license to operate high pressure boilers. All right. Nothing new and exciting here. Boilers over 15 PSI, considered high pressure boilers, you need a license to operate them. All right. Now, back in the year 2000, we kind of conceded a little point because let's face it, nobody likes boiler operators. Boiler operators sit in the boiler room and they do very little work. All right. Does anybody work in a boiler room?
Yep, I do.
Danny, is that accurate?
Yep.
That description?
That is a very accurate description.
All right. All right. Now, what we conceded is this: 3 different types of attendance required in a boiler room. All right. Now, from my perspective, the type of plant you want to work at is called continuous attendance. That means you have to stay in the boiler room the entire time you're there. For old people like me, that's perfect. All right. Very little work. All right. For those of you that are more energetic or like running around fixing stuff, there are 2 other types of plants: non-continuous attendance and periodic attendance. All right. In those plants, the boiler operator doesn't have to stay in the plant. He can go out in the facility as a mechanic, machine operator, basically whatever they want you to do. The only requirement is that you check on the boilers periodically. All right. Does anybody work at that type of plant?
Soon,
What's that?
once they can get our system operating, we'll be up and running on that.
What, non-continuous or periodic?
Non-continuous.
Yep. So you'll have remote monitoring equipment out in the facility.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. And you guys like that idea or?
As a manager, probably, but as a boiler guy, probably not.
All right. Yeah. So you understand this pretty completely, yeah. I mean, depending on your understanding of this, a lot of people find boiler work pretty boring. All right. You have to stay there. All right. If your relief calls in sick, sometimes you get stuck. You can't leave. You got to work a double. All right. It's not pretty, but you don't work hard at all. And you can work for a very long time and not get beat up. All right. Whereas I think running around being a mechanic, you get beat up after bending over, takes its toll on you after a while. But that's just me talking, So anyway, I would encourage you to look at all the opportunities, but there's a ton of jobs in all the different types of plants, whether it's non-continuous or continuous attendance. All right. One of the downsides from my perspective is that many boiler rooms operate with one person. All right. And if you work alone for long periods of time, it affects you. And what I mean by that, when I was teaching at Westwood, the classroom, I would take the class to Norwood Hospital for a tour. And I always gave them a heads up, I'm gonna bring the class by and we're gonna take a tour of the boilers. One night I went there, the door was locked, so we rang the buzzer and the boiler operator answered the door completely naked, wearing work boots and carrying a guitar. All right. And I think working alone for long periods of time puts you in that kind of frame of mind. No one's going to see me, so I can do whatever I want. But I'm sure that's an extreme case. Danny, do you work alone in the boiler room or?
In the past I have, but not anymore. I have a partner.
Okay. Ed, are you all by yourself or you got somebody with you?
I am by myself, yes.
Yeah. You seem pretty normal right up till now. Hey, how long you been doing that by yourself?
For about a year, so it hasn't settled in yet.
There you go. All right, so how they break this down is by boiler horsepower. All right. Boiler horsepower is something we'll talk about a little bit later, but one of the terms that comes up out of this is aggregate boiler horsepower. All right. And we'll use this example. If each one of these boilers is 200 boiler horsepower, what type of plant do I have here?
600 horsepower.
600 boiler horsepower. Everybody gets that, right? All right. That's what they mean by aggregate horsepower. As long as all the boilers are connected to a common steam line, a main header, then you have to count all the available boilers. All right. That often dictates whether the plant is continuous, non-continuous, or periodic attendance. Does everybody kind of get that? Now, one of the things that's happening in the industry that's not too cool is the company will shut down boiler 3 and they will try to convince the operators that what they have now is a 400 horsepower plant requiring non-continuous attendance. Is that right?
No.
Nope.
No, it's not right. As long as these boilers remain connected to that header, you have to include the horsepower of each boiler. All right. So be leery of that because that's a pretty common occurrence in the industry. Anyway, periodic attendance is 9 to 250 horsepower. Non-continuous, 251 to 500. And anything over 501 boiler horsepower is continuous attendance. You have to stay in the boiler room. All right. Just to give you a little background, non-continuous attendance, all right, those people with that size boiler have to install remote monitoring equipment out in the facility. That means if there's an alarm on the boiler, it rings throughout the facility and it alerts the mechanics or whoever that it's time to go check on the boiler. All right. They should plan on checking on the boiler 4 to 6 times per shift, basically every 2 hours. All right. Periodic attendance means that the boiler is a little bit smaller. It doesn't require that remote monitoring equipment. And that's the difference between periodic and non-continuous. All right. This is something they ask about a lot because this is really a big deal in this industry. All right. Some companies have gone to extraordinary measures. There's a company in Norwood called Home Market Foods. All right. They have about 5 boilers right now, and they got it set up. So some of the boilers can only supply steam to certain processes, and other boilers are hooked up. The whole intention is to stay below that 500 horsepower, boiler horsepower threshold, so they can utilize non-continuous attendance. They can use the boiler guys as mechanics, machine operators in the facility. Does everybody kind of get that? So,
So they're just kind of being cheap.
what?
They're just trying to be cheap and not pay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the accurate way of putting it. Yeah, that's the bottom line. They feel that a person in the boiler room is wasteful. That person could be better utilized out in the facility doing whatever it is they do. So, and just so you know how weird this industry is, there is actually boiler manufacturers building boilers of 8.9 horsepower. All right. So they skate just below that threshold where you'd need licensed people. All right.
Yes, they do.
Why is that something you're familiar with, Mike? Or,
Yes, it is.
you don't happen to be one of those boiler manufacturers, do you?
No, but the small plant at the hospital I work at, I kind of go around and look at per day, and yeah, some of those high pressure boilers are 8.9 horsepower.
Yeah, that's that's interesting, to say the least. One of the things that everybody here will become familiar with, some of you might already be pretty familiar with, one of the only requirements that they have of boiler operators, all right, is that you fill out the operator's logbook. All right. Has anybody ever seen this before? Yeah, this is basically a state logbook where if you're in a continuous attendance plant, all right, you only have to sign this once a shift. All right. If you're in a non-continuous plant, technically, every time someone goes to the boiler room, they have to fill this out. All right. So if you go there 2 or 3 times, 4 times a day on your shift, you'd have 4 entries on this logbook. But this logbook tells you to do stuff like blow down the boiler, blow down the gauge glass, test the safety valve. All right. Ed, is this something you fill out at your plant?
Yep. Usually every time I come in, beginning of every shift, especially.
Okay, good. All right. And you check off whatever's applicable in your situation?
Yeah, we just don't usually test the safety valve, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, for the guys that are kind of new to this business, I'll try to explain each term as we come across it. If this is a boiler, all right, every boiler is equipped with a drain pipe at its lowest point. And as you probably figured out, when you boil water and make steam, the steam is pure. All the impurities stay behind in the water. We often measure that as dissolved solids, total dissolved solids. All right. As you can imagine, the more steam you make, the more concentrated those impurities become. So periodically, we open these valves and drain water out of the boiler while it's operating. We call that a blowdown. And what happens is clean makeup water, feed water, replenishes the dirty water that we let out of the boiler. All right. This is something that happens in every boiler room. Some plants are equipped with continuous blowdown. It has a metering valve and it continuously pulls water out of the boiler to get rid of those impurities. All right. On all boilers, most are equipped with a water column and then a gauge glass. Some of you might know it as a sight glass. Well, we can actually see the level of water in the boiler. These devices are also equipped with drain lines with valves. And one of the things they ask is that you blow these down, open the drain valves once a shift. Right? And that's some of the tasks that are typical of a boiler operator. As Ed mentioned, one of the things that they want you to do is test the safety valve manually. Every safety valve has a lifting lever that you can lift it, let steam out of the boiler. The requirement used to be you do that every day, but they realized that that's kind of silly, all right, as it results in the disc of the valve getting cut and they leak, all right? So right now, the state's requiring that you only test the safety valves periodically, all right? All right, what the right frequency is, nobody seems to really know, all right? If they ask you on the state exam, it's once every 30 days. But some companies never test them. In fact, many companies just send them out every 3 years and have them reconditioned. Here's the problem. Rainwater, moisture accumulates on the disc of the valve and it rusts, all right? In some cases, it rusts shut. Guess what's not going to happen when the pressure gets high in the boiler?
Are going to pop.
The safety valve won't open. So the argument is you should test it at least sometimes, all right, to make sure that it's going to work, all right? But Ed's exactly right. Most people don't ever test them, all right? Do you send yours out, Ed? Do you know if that happens at your plant or?
Yeah, typically we send them out, get them reconditioned. We have one kind of like in the back that is circulated out, and, you know, as we, you know, change them out.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's the point. It almost seems silly from my perspective, but a couple of the questions on the state exam ask you what information is not on the operator's logbook. The only way I know how to teach you that is by telling you what is on the operator's logbook. For instance, on the state exam, they'll ask you, is outside contractors in the plant one of the categories on this logbook? And of course, it's not. But you wouldn't know that unless you know what each of these headings said. Does everybody kind of get that? So while it seems silly to me, that's why I spend time talking about this. All right.
So for this slide, I know you give us the printouts. I can barely read mine. Is there another place I could get that information?
Yep, right before. Can you read this page right before that?
46A, okay. Yeah.
Starting with number 1, it gives you the 8 headings that are on the state operator's logbook.
Okay.
All right, so those are the 8 topics that you're supposed to look at. All right.
Okay.
And just familiarize yourself with them, all right? Only because they ask you what information is not contained on the operator's logbook, all right?
Throughout the courses, are we gonna visit a plant to get familiarized with the boilers, or no? It's just gonna be strictly a Zoom.
Oh, we can. Now, what happens, just since you asked, almost every month, I take the continuing education class to a plant for a field trip on the weekends, Saturday or Sunday. And when I do that, I'll invite all of you to come along. All right.
Great.
So
I'm a visual learner, so in addition to all the notes here, I need to actually see what's going on. And
many people are exactly like you. Most people have no idea what I'm talking about until they see it. All right. And that's very true of a lot of people. And you know, when I worked at Brayton Point, I used to take the class there, and that plant was huge, overwhelming. And when you looked at the boiler, you went up in an elevator and you get off, say, on the sixth, the boiler was 11 stories tall. And when you get off the elevator on the 7th floor, you were looking at a wall like you'd be looking at the wall in a bedroom. You didn't know the difference. So it really didn't provide any insight to anybody. But if you go into a small plant like Norwood Hospital or the paper mill where I'm the chief at, all right, you can see the whole boiler, take in all the equipment with one view. And that's pretty useful for a lot of people.
You still the chief? You still the chief at the paper mill, Mr. Walker?
I am.
I think I went there 4 years ago with you on the continuing ed.
Really?
Yeah,
It was pretty exciting, wasn't it?
it was. It was something extraordinary.
So yes, Stefan, you know, anytime I take a class, I'll let you know about it, and you're more than welcome to tag along.
That's great. I'll definitely do that because, like I say, it's a new change for me. So I want to know as much as possible, physically and online, going through the notes and obviously the Zoom class. So I appreciate that.
Well, I was kind of lucky, you know, not to get off the beaten path here, but when I was 18 years old, I decided I wanted to try this. My father took me to a plant where he worked at Bird and Son. He didn't work in the boiler room, but he worked at the plant. And he brought me to the boiler room and asked the guys there if I could have a look around. There were 4 guys in that boiler room and they were playing cards. All right. So they said, yeah, go ahead, let the kid look around. And I went there 3 or 4 times because every time they talked about a different piece of equipment, I was the same as you. I had to go see it, see what the hell they were talking about. Every time I went there, those 4 guys were playing cards. All right. And I remember to this day telling my father, I'm pretty sure I can do this boiler job. Because it doesn't look like anybody's doing much of anything. So that's what got me interested. But yeah, I can relate to the fact you got to see it to really understand it, you know.
All right.
Section 47 just tells you, hey, you operate high pressure boilers without a license and we catch you, you're in violation of the law. All right. Everybody kind of gets that. You'd be very surprised at the number of times this happens though. You know, especially at the plants that require periodic or non-continuous attendance. They have people checking on the boilers that aren't licensed. And that's bad news, as you can imagine, right? So. Section 48 talks about boiler horsepower, all right? Now, some of these things aren't going to make any sense to you at all, but welcome to the United States of America, because a lot of things that we consider standards today are pretty hokey to begin with. All right. Does anybody know how they come up with horsepower? Regular good old horsepower.
Horse.
Did you guys go to school prior to this? All right.
We definitely did. I mean, that was a while ago. So
All right. But just to prove my point of how hokey this was, they took a horse, and excuse my drawing, it's rather primitive, but you're going to get the idea in a minute. They put a harness on him, and they arbitrarily chose 550 pounds. And you can guess what happened next. They said, giddy up. All right. And the horse lifted that weight 1 foot. And they said, close enough for us. That's 1 horsepower. All right. 550 foot-pounds per second. Or 33,000 foot-pounds per minute is 1 horsepower in the United States. That's as hokey as this gets. Does everybody get that? In fact, many other countries, Germany, Japan, they don't even recognize this description of horsepower. You're kidding, right? That's what you're calling it? All right. Does everybody kind of get that? All right. In 1876, boilers were coming into their own. They were starting to become very popular. And they said, how are we going to rate how much power a boiler makes? And they said, well, we'll call it boiler horsepower. And what they agreed to do, all right, in 1876, they had a big party in this country. They called it the Centennial. Country was 100 years old. All right. And they had all the different boiler manufacturers there. And in 1876, the average boiler operated at 70 PSI, and it evaporated 30 pounds of water per hour. So the people that ran the fair said, let's make that a boiler horsepower, the evaporation of 30 pounds of water. And someone smarter than those guys said, but wait a minute, what if we change the pressure the boiler operates at? That will change the amount of steam generated. So what they agreed to do, they said, let's pretend that all boilers operate at atmospheric pressure, 14.7. The average boiler then would evaporate 34.5 pounds of water per hour. That became the standard for 1 boiler horsepower. The evaporation of 34.5 pounds of water per hour. Does that seem a little hokey to you?
yeah, you lost me. You lost me.
It has nothing to do with power in any way that you would measure it. All right. But that's the standard. All right. Now, for those of you that took science in high school, does anybody remember the term latent heat of evaporation?
No.
All right, Martin, go ahead. Tell us what's your understanding of it.
A little bit of it. Latent heat of evaporation is what I believe is like in a coolant tower. You'll have a condenser water will go into a coolant tower to get rid of the heat that's in the water, and you'll have latent heat of evaporation to get rid of it.
Okay, All right, I'll buy that. That's not bad. All right. But let's make it a little simpler so everybody can understand it. All right.
Yeah.
When you boil water at home, and who knows why you're boiling water, probably you're making noodles or something. All right. How hot can the water get?
212.
212 degrees. All right. Can the water ever get hotter than that?
Yeah, super.
Without being under pressure.
Right.
Excellent, excellent. At atmospheric pressure, the highest temperature the water will ever become is 212. All right. If we add more heat, we're going to make steam from that water. And guess what temperature that's going to be at?
212.
212 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. What's the difference between steam at 212 and water at 212? Is the latent heat of evaporation. That additional heat that we added that causes a change of state, but not a change in temperature. All right. In this particular case, we had to add 970 BTUs for every pound of water to get it to become steam. Anybody remember that number? All right. If you take evaporation of 34.5 pounds of water and multiply it by 970.3, you get 33,475 BTUs, the number of BTUs in 1 boiler horsepower. Does that make sense? All right. I'm just telling you where these numbers come from. All right. All right. Now think about this. I'm going to measure the steam coming out of my boiler as BTUs per hour. And let's make it simple. Let's say this 1 horsepower boiler is putting out 33,475 BTUs. Whoops. How many BTUs in fuel input did I have to put in to get that much output? Is the number going to be higher or lower? Higher, why?
Efficiency?
Absolutely. Is anything 100% efficient?
No.
No. All right. So what they did, they assumed an efficiency of 80% for the average boiler.
Pointed up really high.
And they divided that number by 0.8 to get the 41,480. All right. So when they say to you, how does the state of Massachusetts figure out boiler horsepower? There are basically 4 methods. The manufacturer's tag. All right. Now here's a little tip. Has anybody ever heard of a package fire tube boiler?
Yes, I have one.
All right, good. Cleaver Brooks?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Cleaver Brooks is an excellent example because their boiler number, their model number is boiler horsepower. So some manufacturers tell us what the horsepower is. That's nice, right? The state of Massachusetts says if they tell us what it is, we don't have to do the calculation. All right. Unfortunately, many boiler manufacturers don't tell us that. They only tell us how much steam the boiler makes in pounds per hour. If we know that number, we'll divide by 34.5 to get boiler horsepower. If they tell us how much fuel the boiler will burn in BTU per hour input, then we'll divide by 41,840 to get boiler horsepower. And if they tell us the boiler output but it's expressed as BTUs per hour, then we'll divide by 33,475 to get boiler horsepower. The unfortunate thing about this is you got to memorize these 4 methods on how the state of Massachusetts determines boiler horsepower. All right.
Would that be like a multiple choice question, or you really
Yeah,
have to?
exactly. Now,
Okay.
the cool thing is, the typical question is worded like this. It says, which of these numbers can be used to determine boiler horsepower? And they'll say A, 34.5, B, 41,840, C, 33,475, or D, all of the above. What would be the correct answer?
E.
Yeah, D, all of the above. Does everybody kind of get that? All right. The only way I can be certain that you know that is for you to memorize these numbers. Does everybody kind of see? You know, are you ever going to use this in real life? Probably not. All right. So a lot of this stuff you're going to learn just for the purpose of the test. Now, is it Deverton, or how do you say it again?
Deverton.
Deverton. Do you remember any of the questions that were on your state exam?
Yes, not all of them, but I do remember quite a few of them.
All right. Do you remember anything like this? Boiler horsepower?
Yep.
Yeah. You studied this on your own. Did you get it right? Or?
Yes. Yep. This is so Max Gregg.
Yeah.
I'm best friends with his son. And
Oh, okay.
I was actually getting to, so I don't know if you know Matt, but he was the one that was teaching me on the side.
I had, weren't there twins in that family somewhere?
Yeah. His brother and sister.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I had a couple of them guys.
And then I don't know if you know John Hancock.
The guy that signed the Declaration of Independence.
No, actually, he went to Peterson a couple years ago, 2 years ago.
I'm
really good friends with him.
Oh, okay. So they helped you prepare.
Yeah, I actually have an old Peterson book and everything. So
okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So anyway, this is a common question on the state exam. So I'm just trying to prepare you. Remember to take the state exam. But I'm not going to beat you up on this all in one night. We'll cover this over and over again by the time you get done with this course. So, don't sweat it out and say, oh shit, I got to remember this stuff for next class. You don't. But I'll let you know. Right now it's just about 7:30. Why don't we go ahead and take a 10-minute break? And then we'll pick this up after you take a little break. All right.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. That's kind of fucked up though if he doesn't go every day.
Wait, where are you guys going? Get down, move up. Yes. Get out of there. Dad.
Casey was laughing in my head. A little cheese will practice. So there was crumbles of cheese on the ground. And I put the plate on the top, so it's like wash it away. I took she made the plate this, you wash it all around.
Where are you guys going? That might not be long enough. Like, that happened. Pilot? Yeah. That other one. wouldn't go that far. I'd say it's worth over one. Oh, that's a lot. It's double side. Emma. Oh, you see a number down. We went into a rival for a second. Yeah. Could it through the soup? No, I want to be. Oh, yeah, I'm putting.
All right, it looks like we're back at it here. One word of caution for second fireman. The only thing they're really going to ask you is, what are the 4 ways the state of Massachusetts determines boiler horsepower? They're not going to ask you where these numbers were derived from, all right, or how you come up with them, all right? However, they do typically ask first firemen and third engineers that question. So I just want to put everybody's mind at ease. All you really got to do is remember these 4 methods. The other good news is this. the state of Massachusetts still has a formula on the books for determining engine horsepower. That's steam engines. All right. The last operating steam engine plant in Massachusetts, Natick Paperboard, shut down 15 years ago. All right. They never asked second firemen, how do you determine engine horsepower? All right. Typically, this is a question they'll ask a first or second engineer. The one thing they ask third engineers consistently is how do they determine turbine horsepower? All right. I don't know anybody's background, but a steam turbine is a machine that can replace an electric motor to drive any piece of equipment, whether it be a pump, a fan, compressor, a chiller. All right. To operate steam turbines that run on steam produced by a boiler, all right, a second fireman can't do it. A second fireman can only run boilers. All right. First fireman, third engineers, that's the license you need to operate steam turbines. Is everybody kind of with me on this? All right. All right. Good. So that being said, the only person that has any interest in turbine horsepower then are first fireman and third engineer candidates. And this thing is even hokier than horsepower or boiler horsepower. They base horsepower based on the external diameter of the steam supply pipe. All right, which really has nothing to do at all with horsepower, but it has everything to do with the license law. What license you need to operate these steam turbines. As many of you probably heard, most control room jobs in plants where they generate steam to produce electricity, you need to be a second engineer to be a control room operator. All right. That's based solely on the size of the turbine, the horsepower of the turbine. So that's, I'm going to go over this in much more detail with the thirds, but the second firemen need not concern themselves with this at all. So, all right. Now, for those of you that are kind of new to this, there are basically 5 licenses in this business. Second class fireman is the entry level license. All right. From there, it goes to first fireman, third engineer, second engineer, and first engineer. Technically, you can go from second fireman to first engineer in about 5 years if you put your nose to the grindstone. All right. What's important on this page for the second class fireman is this sentence right here where my cursor is. That sentence says second class, meaning second class fireman, can operate any boiler or boilers under the engineer or fireman in direct charge thereof. That's what can you do with this license? So when they ask you that, you say a second class fireman can operate any boiler or boilers under the engineer or fireman in direct charge thereof. If you're going for third engineer, that license is right here, third class. And I'm not going to read it to you. I know you know how to read, but that's what they're going to ask you on the state exam when you show up. What can you do with the license we're about to give you? All right. So that's something you also need to memorize. What can you do with a second class fireman's license? As I mentioned earlier, there's a whole category of people out there that have special licenses. All right. you can get a special license in Massachusetts to operate just the boilers in your specific plant. All right. Some people find this useful, a good license to have. All right. Remember, with a second fireman's license, you can go anywhere and operate the boilers. The special license only allows you to operate the boilers in that particular plant. If you quit that job, then that license is no longer valid. All right. You could get another one for the new plant you work at, but seems kind of problematic to me. All right. One of the things that people don't like about this business is that there is a continuing education requirement, meaning every time you go to renew your license, you've got to get 30 hours of continuing education in order to do so. All right. If you don't get that 30 hours, they'll let you renew your license, but they'll stamp it inactive and you can't work with it. All right. To make it active, all you have to do is go out and get the 30 hours of continuing education. All right. This is going to be a problem for you. All right. The first time you get the license, all right, your license will always expire on your birthday. All right. And depending on when you take the test and get the license relative to your birthday, that first license may only be good for at least a year, but at least 2 years. Within that time period, you have to take your first continuing education class. All right.
Do you
Everybody-
provide that course or?
What's that?
Do you provide that course or is something
Yeah,
that you?
Peterson's provides it. There's a couple other people in the Commonwealth that provide it. You can do it online. I do it at school. Usually we do it on the weekend, but you don't need not worry about that yet. But it's something you got to worry about down the road. The guys that already have a license, did anybody go through this? Danny, you still out there?
Yep, I've been through it. Yep.
Yep, not a big deal, right?
Nope. I actually my last continuing ed, I think I took it at Peterson's.
Okay, good. Yeah, yeah. So it's not a big deal. And
Do you have to take the test again? Or you just gotta show that you completed 30 hours of requirements?
just do that 30 hours. And the good thing is, after that first time, every time after that you renew your license, it's good for 5 years. So you only have to take that 30-hour course once every 5 years. All right, so that's nice.
I got a question, by the way.
Yep.
I have the second fireman license. So I was also told that taking this course can also count as the 30 hours as well.
It doesn't. It doesn't. All right. At Peterson School, if you take the first and second engineers course, that counts for the 30-hour as well, because I cover everything that they require me to cover in the 30-hour course. I don't talk about that stuff here. So as a result, it's not covered. Sorry.
Wait, so I'm a little confused. And so wait, you said later on we're going to be covering as in, because I'm here for the third engineer.
Yep.
Yeah, that's later on at the end of the course after the second fireman gets dropped off.
Yep.
Correct? So that's when it counts, not at this point in time though.
That's right.
Okay, I got it then. Okay. Just
Okay.
making sure.
All right. Now, in case you're wondering, what it takes to be eligible to take this test, Section 50 tells you exactly. All right. Second fireman, you have to be at least 18 years old and be able to breathe on your own. All right. That's really the only requirement. All right. And they'll waive that requirement that you be 18 if you went to a high school that offered STEAM engineering. All right, like New Bedford Voc, for instance. All right, some of those kids come out of high school, they got first fireman's licenses. All right. What's important here to you, I think, is that after you've held that second fireman's license for 6 months, you can go for the next higher license, which is first fireman. All right. So you can move up the ladder relatively quickly. What seems to be pretty popular today is that people actually skip the first fireman's step and they go directly for the third engineer's license. All right. If you have a 1.5 years experience and a second fireman's license, you can skip first fireman and go directly to third engineer. All right. Does everybody follow that? Danny, is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. Is
Yep.
there like a certain amount of hours that you have to work?
No.
Or like, do you have to be in a full-time job or
No.
does it like? Okay.
You only have to have held a second fireman's license for 1.5 years and used it. If you only use it one day, you meet the letter of the law. All right.
Wow. Okay.
All right. It's the time you hold the license. All right. And how they word it is right there. Or must have held and used a first-class fireman's license for not less than 1 year. All right. So yeah, they don't require you to have X amount of hours, like an electrician apprentice or something like that, HVAC apprentice. Now, some of you, I don't know if this applies, but if you have a college degree from a recognized engineering school, or you were in the Merchant Marine or in the Navy, all right, you can sometimes skip all that and go directly for your second engineer's license. All right. So if that might apply to you, you can talk to me, send me an email. All right. But it lists everything that you can have. All right. To make you eligible to sit for the second engineer's license. All right. Otherwise, you got to hold a third engineer's license for at least 1 year. And then you can sit for your second engineer's license. All right. First engineer, that's the top license in this business. Like I said, you can get there in 5 years if you put your nose to the grindstone. Here's what's probably important to you. All right. For every license after second fireman, somebody in the business has to endorse your application. All right. That means somebody's got to vouch for you. And what they're saying is that you're a good person, you haven't blown anything up, and you should sit for the higher license. You're eligible to take it. All right. Typically, the person that does that for you is the chief engineer at the place you work. He knows you, and he'll endorse your application. Second firemen don't need that on their application. We let everybody in the business come on in, the water's fine type of thing. If you like it, fine. If you don't, fine. You get the idea. All right. A lot of people get the second fireman's license just to have it in their pocket. All right. Let's face it, an entry-level license, the best you're looking at is $27 to $35 an hour. All right. There are some second fireman's jobs that pay pretty high. The highest I've heard of is $45 an hour at Massport, but that's pretty good for an entry-level job. Does everybody get that? As you go up the ladder, as you would expect, the pay gets better. All right. So you can make some pretty good money in this industry. All right. Section 51 just tells you something that everybody in the business already knows. When you get your license, you got to hang it up at your place of employment. All right, post it. Many plants have a license board where they keep everybody's license. All right. When you get the license, they're going to give you a little laminated copy. All right, you can carry it around in your wallet if you want, impress people, or hang it up where you work. And then they also give you a diploma type looking thing that's your actual license. All right. But one of them's got to be hanging where you work, posted where you work. And that's basically what section 50 says. When you take the oral exam, they're going to have you take an oath. Nothing political in nature. It just says you are who you are and that everything that you put on the application is true. All right. Again, Danny, I don't mean to pick on you, but you went through that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No big deal. Section 57 says if you happen to fail the test, you have to wait 60 days before you can reapply. All right. That's the penalty for not getting your license the first time you go. All right. There's also an incentive to study hard and get the license. It costs $100 to take the test. All right. So,
Have you had any guys that went to take the test and they failed? They had to take it again?
Yep, it does happen. It does happen. We won't pick on him right now, but Jeffrey Lopez, he's in this class. He got one wrong. I mean, one more wrong than you're allowed to get. He got a 68 on the written test. You need to get a 70. That's one question he missed it by. All right. So it does happen. I don't mean to pick on Jeff, but I think it has more to do with where he works than his ability. He's the kid that works at National Grid. And the inspectors have been giving that group a kind of a hard time for some time now. So that's my opinion. But yeah, it's pretty rare. Like I said, my success rate is like 99.7% get the license the first time. So if you do what I say, you'll be all right.
You said it's 50 questions?
50 multiple choice questions. All right. And by the time you get out of here, just to prepare you for this, whoops. Let me just show you this. That's not what I wanted to do. Let me try to put this back. I guess I can't do that. Whatever.
Is there any positions where you need a hoisting license as well?
That's not uncommon, but if they want you to get the 2C, whatever they call it, hoisting license, they'll usually pay for that. And it's pretty common for people in this business to combo up wastewater or water treatment license. The grade 2 is what a lot of plants like you to have. That allows you to neutralize the water before we discharge it to the sewer. So the secret is get a fireman's license, get a job at a company, and any licenses they require beyond that, they'll pay you to go to school. So that's the key to this
That's
business.
nice.
Have somebody else pay for it. All right, whenever possible. That's a rule of thumb of mine. You don't have to follow it. You can pay yourself if you like, but anyway, getting back to what we were talking about. Everybody that takes the test sends me the questions. And I, in turn, pass the questions on to you. So these are the actual questions from the state exam. So for instance, question number 2 says, which of the following can be used to determine boiler horsepower? 34.5, 33,475, 41,840, or all of the above?
All of the above.
Yeah. So you get how easy this game is, right? All right. So what will happen before you get out of here, I'll send you all the questions I have, all right, from all the written tests that people have taken, all right? And you can use those as a study guide, all right, for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's actually a good deal.
Quick question going back to the time frame. So if you do happen to fail, it's 60 days?
Yep.
Well, I was under the impression it was 90, but
Yeah, they
all right.
changed that July 1st of 2016.
Okay.
You only have to wait 60 days now. The old expression was when you took a test, there were only 2 outcomes. You passed or you got 90 days. All right. The state thought that making you guys wait 90 days was lost revenue. All right. So they said, let them take the test more often than every 90 days.
Massachusetts in revenue.
There you go. That's it. It's a moneymaker. So, yeah, once you figure out the rules of the game, it makes the game pretty easy, right? But getting back to this, just bear with me a second. I also have all the oral exams that people have taken. All right. So for instance, you pass the written and you get a letter notified by the inspector that your inspector is Patrick Kane. All right. You can look through these oral exams and see the type of questions that he asked other candidates during their oral exam. So a lot of people find that kind of helpful. All right. Does everybody kind of get that?
Yeah, is there a set amount of questions they ask you in the oral exam? Or
No.
Okay.
In fact, if you look at this one, let me open this up. This was a person that took the test. I don't know when this was. She had Patrick Kane, and the oral exam was 12 questions. All right. She said it took all of 10 minutes. Now it's job hunting time. So her oral exam took 10 minutes. All right. You know, we can talk to the people here, Danny, Ed, that have taken the test. How was your oral exam, Danny?
Oh, I don't recall. That was a while back.
Yeah, a week back, huh? But yeah, so to answer your question, it varies, but most inspectors go pretty easy on second firemen. All right. And what hurts most of you is anxiety, worrying about it. All right. If you're prepared, just go and, you know, let it happen, as they say. So the interesting thing is, all the way up to third engineer, there's one inspector for the oral exam. But for first and second engineer, there's 3 inspectors. All right. They form a board and each one of them asks you questions. All right. So that's probably a little more reason to be anxious or nervous. But with one inspector, it should be a cakewalk for you. All right. But not tonight, but somewhere over the next few weeks, I'll send you all these questions so you have them. All right. Does everybody kind of get that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in other words, anything that happens in the state exam is not going to be a big surprise. All right. And in case you're wondering, I have these databases of state exam questions for every license. So third engineer questions, first fireman, second engineer, first engineer, you get the idea. So they're all here. All right. So, any questions? All right, let's get back to it then. One of the things that nobody likes is they can suspend or revoke your license. All right. If you do something stupid, they can suspend your license, just like a driver's license. All right. If you get it suspended, you're going to get it back at some point in the future. If they revoke your license, it's gone for good. All right. That's pretty serious. Since I've been in this business 45 years, I only know of a couple people that had their licenses revoked, and it involved that a boiler explosion in Salem Harbor that happened in 2007. 3 people died. And that in itself is such a rare occurrence. The last boiler explosion prior to that was in 1910. Right? So boilers don't blow up typically. All right. They leak, they come apart. There's always a little excitement in the boiler room business. When I get in this business, somebody described it to me, running boilers is 99% boredom, 1% terror. All right. That 1% you might never see. All right. If you work at a trash plant, you probably saw a little terror. All right. But you get the idea. It's a pretty boring business.
With good money.
Huh?
With good
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. I don't know where else you can make 100 grand and do literally no work. In fact, when I get in this business for 5 years, I was embarrassed to tell people what I did for work. I couldn't believe it. They put me on night shift and they said every couple hours, walk around and take these readings. All right. And after about a month, I stopped doing that completely. So unless you work at a trash plant, then they're going to work your ass off. But anyway, the question they ask on the state exam about this particular section 59 is, why would the state suspend or revoke your license? All right. And remember, when they hand you your license, it has your name on it. And it says that you've been tested and found competent and trustworthy. So the only reason they can take it away is if they find you incompetent or untrustworthy. So that's the way that question is worded on the state exam. Why would they take your license away? And the answer is if they find you incompetent or untrustworthy. Doesn't happen all that much, trust me. Section 64 explains the entire game of the license exam taking process. All right. You have to first take a written exam that you send in an application to apply for. All right. Once they get your application, cash your check, they'll send you a letter telling you where to report to take the test. Right now, they're only given the written test in Stowe, Mass. All right. They told me sometime this year, they're going to start offering the written exam in Bridgewater, Mass. But that hasn't happened yet. So hopefully by the time you become eligible to take the test, that'll happen. All right. They're going to give you 4 hours to take the test. The average fireman takes about 20 minutes. All right. But they've allotted you 4 hours. All right. They'll correct the test. Remember, it's fill in the dot like the old SAT test. All right. A machine actually corrects your test. All right. So they know the results pretty quick. What usually happens, they'll send you a letter, or the inspector will call you or email you telling you you passed the written. Let's set up a date for the oral exam. All right. At that time, you set up that date, you go and take the oral exam, and usually within a week or two of when you took the written, you got the license. Everybody kind of get that? All right. Now, here's the good news. If you pass the written, but fail for some reason the oral exam, you don't have to start all over again. All right. What that means is the results of the written exam stand for 1 year. All right. So you can take as many as 3 orals on that one passing written test. Does everybody kind of get that? So you get 3 chances.
Does that qualify for the engineers as well?
Yep. Yep. So they give you plenty of opportunity. You know, you got to pay $100 each time, but still, you don't have to start over. All right. The other weird thing that some people think is weird, the oral exam, they tape record it. All right. So you go in a room, the office with the inspector, he turns on a tape recorder and he tape records the entire exam. All right. That's done for fairness, to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot, a fair test. So somebody can't come out and say, Jesus, the inspector was really hard on me. He really raked me over the coals. They try to keep it uniform throughout the Commonwealth. All right. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You know, it's for your own advantage that they tape record it. All right. The cool news is if you pass the oral right there on the spot, they hand you the license. Go get a job. Go do your thing, whatever. All right. Any questions about this whole process? All right. Sometime over the next month, I'll send you the application. All right. Print out a couple copies so you can practice on one. I'll help you fill it out. We'll go over it in class. And it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It gets a little dicey as you go up the ladder. For instance, Danny on his application, he's going to have to list all the places he worked and the types of boilers, turbines that he ran. All right. But for second fireman, it's pretty straightforward. Now, one of the options you have, and I don't recommend this, and I'm going to be adamant about this, don't appeal. If you get the results of your exam and you're convinced that you passed, but they told you that you failed, everybody has the right to appeal. All right. And let me tell you how that works. All right. Remember, you have to be pissed off at one boiler inspector. In fact, what the law says is anyone aggrieved by the decision of a single examiner has the right to appeal. All right. So what happens? You decide that you got treated unfairly. The inspector that failed you gets two of his inspector buddies. They form a little board and they call you in and ask you every boiler question. If you pass that, you win. You successfully appealed. Guess how many times I've heard of somebody winning that appeal?
Zero.
Yeah, zero. All right. So save your breath, save your money. And they also charge you to file an appeal. I think it's only $25, but still. All right. Just take your beating, retake the test and pass it. Is everybody on board with that? All right. But the thing is, on the state exam, they'll ask you who has the right to appeal. And the answer is anyone aggrieved by the decision of a single examiner has the right to appeal. All right. All right. As I mentioned, the first time you get a license, well, let me start over. Every license expires on your birthday. All right. The argument there is that's an important day for you. All right. So depending on when you take the test relative to your birthday will dictate how long that license is good for. It has to be good for at least a year, but not more than 2. And then you got to renew it the first time. After that, you only have to renew it every 5 years. All right. If you get a second fireman's license and a year later you get a first fireman's license, the clock starts all over again. Does everybody get that? All right. Technically, you can go from second fireman to third engineer and never have to do continuing education. All right. So hopefully that'll be an incentive to you. The whole middle of this paragraph deals with people that we call leap year babies. All right. And the way the state of Massachusetts deals with you, if your birthday's February 29th, they call March 1st your birthday. All right. For the purpose of the license law. All right. So do we have any leap year babies here? Good. We don't have to talk about that. That's pretty rare. I don't know many of those. All right. This section also tells you this, which is very important. If your license expires, you can't work with it anymore. However, all is not lost. The license will remain a license for another year beyond the expiration date. However, within that 1 year grace period, you have to make it active. Does everybody kind of get that? All right. So you can let it expire, but just don't let it expire and go beyond a year.
If your license is about to expire, when is the best time to renew it?
Well, it's just like your driver's license. What the department will do is tell you that your license is up for renewal. All right. So they make it pretty easy. It's not hokey like Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, I had that license, the stationary year in Rhode Island. Everybody's license in Rhode Island expires on July 1st. All right. But here's what they told me in Rhode Island. If it expires, just come in and pay the $50 and we'll give it back to you. All right. So there was really no incentive to renew that license. Does everybody kind of get that? That's not the case in Massachusetts. You want to pay the money to renew it, even if you're not using it. because you don't want to have to start all over again. All right.
And forgive me if you already said it. What's the fee for that, for the renewal?
$100, I think, or $90. It's $100 to take the test right now. I think it's, I don't know, Danny, do you remember what the renewal was? Is it 90 or
No,
100?
I don't remember.
Yeah. One of the things that bothers everybody in this business is once you become a fireman or an engineer, you are technically qualified to do pipe fitting in the plant that you work at. In other words, you become a pipe fitter where you work. They can hand you a pipe wrench and say, take apart that pipe. All right. And you are qualified to do that. All right. Does everybody get that? You can't hire yourself out as a pipe fitter anywhere else, but you can do pipe fitting in the place that you work. All right. And trust me, everybody takes advantage of this. Think about it. Rather than hire a pipe fitter, they can use you and you're already an employee, right? All right. For that reason, most guys that work in the boiler room do most of the pipe fitting in the boiler room. All right. They replace the blowdown line, the feed water line, whatever needs to be done. Trust me, you'll be good at it. There's really nothing to it. The one thing to remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey. And you probably already know that, right? So what happens here is this. The state of Massachusetts puts out what they call a range of examination for every license. All right. If you're going for second-class fireman, they're going to tell you specifically what they can ask you. All right. Does everybody kind of get that? They do that for every single license. All right. So they make the game pretty easy for guys like me. If this is what they can ask you, guess what I'm going to cover in this course?
Everything they can ask.
All of that.
Everything on that list. All right. The one thing that I can't help you with is the last paragraph in every range of examination. Questions concerning the plant in which the applicant is presently employed or where they have been employed in the past may be asked during the oral portion of the exam. A lot of people think this is intimidating. I think this is the easiest thing you could ever get asked. In other words, what they're saying, what's your job? And what do you do at your job? All right. You think most of you can answer that? Of course. Yeah, if you're doing it, you can answer it. All right. As you move up the ladder, for instance, Danny and Ed are going for third engineer. All right. The first sentence for those licenses says all of that pertaining to the foregoing grade. So everything you learned as a second fireman is fair game that they can ask you on the third engineer's exam. All right. All right. So everybody understands the game here. All right. They tell us what they can ask you. And I try to prepare you in that subject matter. Pretty straightforward, wouldn't you say? All right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have a question for Danny. So do you get to still use everything you learned from previous experience? I know you're moving forward to get like another certification. The last question that the instructor just read said they could ask you anything. So on your day-to-day work, do you get to use everything that you learn or not really?
Yes and no. And some of the stuff, yeah, you use it daily. Others, sometimes you have to revert back to the basics to refresh your memory. But yeah, it depends.
If you get stuck, how is there someone else you could like call for help, or you on your own?
Depending where you get a job, chances are you being a new guy, there's going to be someone more senior that works in another shift, or you may have a partner. Depending on the job, you can always pick their brain for more information.
Okay.
Right now, I'm working with a guy who's been in the trade for 45 years. So if I get stuck on anything or I want to refresh myself, I just ask him. And they're usually, most guys are usually okay with sharing the knowledge.
All right. Sorry for all the questions, guys.
No, that's fine. The truth of the matter is, and I know that you guys that are going for second fireman that have no experience at all in this business are a little intimidated. All right. The thing to remember, everybody, every single person started where you are. All right. When I went to Peterson School, it was in an old building in Milk Street in 1970. All right. Long before all of you were born. All right. The instructor asks us, how do you know if the boiler has too much water in it? And the guy next to me raised his hand and said, water comes out of the smokestack. All right. And I thought, that's probably a good answer. All right. That's how little that I understood about this business. If water comes out the smokestack, you know, things are way out of control. All right. And so I can feel for what you're saying, because everybody started like you did. Not a clue about what they're looking at or what they're doing. All right. It's only being around this stuff. And that's the glory of this second fireman's license. It's a ticket to learn. It's a ticket to get in the business, find out what it's about, decide if you like it or not, and gain experience. It's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. In my situation, I also started at CMAS, which is different than most people will ever experience. So for a while, my job scope was just shoveling ash and shoveling garbage. So, and that's where I built from and upon. So,
in other words, he's telling you he started at the bottom, you know? Yeah, probably the only worst job over there is on the fuel handling side, which is where they actually put the garbage on conveyor belts on its way to the boiler.
Yeah, those guys, they pick garbage with a pitchfork for 12 hours. That is the worst of all jobs.
Yeah. So anyway, in every one of those ranges of examinations, they tell us they want you to have a knowledge of chapter 146. All right. What we covered tonight gives you that basic knowledge. All right. Sure, you're going to have to study it a little bit, answer the homework questions, but that covers what you need to know. All right. For the ASME code, the only question they ask second firemen about the ASME code is, what does ASME stand for?
American Society of Mechanical Engineers.
Excellent, excellent. As you move up the ladder, they ask you more and more about the ASME code, but the only thing a second fireman needs to know, what does it stand for? All right. In Massachusetts, we have a couple of sets of rules that pertain to this business. The CMRs, CMR stands for Code of Massachusetts Regulations. CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. All right. 522 CMR is what they call the Board of Boiler Rules. All the rules pertaining to boilers are in those regulations. All right. In Massachusetts, the pollution laws are 310 CMR. All right. For boilers, that really basically pertains to smoke or visible emissions coming out of smokestack. All right. They don't get into this very heavy. All right. There's a piping code that they beat first and second engineers on. All right. Everybody, I think, has been exposed to OSHA regulations. All right. Has anybody ever heard of lockout tagout?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So that's how you make equipment safe so you can work on it. All right. You lock it out and tag it out. All right. If you get in a boiler or any other confined space, OSHA says there's procedures that you got to follow. All right. To make sure nobody gets hurt. All right. We'll go over those. All right. So you understand what they're looking for. All right. And then, so you get the idea, right? I'm going to prepare you as best I can for you taking the test. So, all right. As far as the rest of this stuff, it really applies only to third engineers, except 522 CMR 2.02. All right. Paragraph 1. When you get a license in this business, you're considered a boiler operator. All right. As a boiler operator, your only responsibility is to operate the equipment safely on the shift that you're on. You go home, you don't have any further responsibility. Does everybody kind of get that?
Yep.
Guess who has responsibility all the time?
The chief.
The chief or the engineer in charge. All right. Does everybody follow how simple that is? They tell you in the regulations that the only thing the boiler operator has to do is fill out that state logbook. All right. That's your only requirement. All right. So it makes your job pretty simple. All right. Hard to screw it up. All right. The rest of this applies to the engineer in charge, or as you mentioned, the chief. All right. Since none of you are ready to take that job yet, we can skip over that. Do you agree? Except maybe one of those guys from, what is it, Amarak? One of you might be the chief there, right? Is that true?
No, I contract one.
You pay somebody else to do that?
Yep, weekly fee to hang their license.
Yep. Yeah, we call that a paper chief.
Yeah.
And that's actually my job at the paper mill. I sign the logbook as the engineer in charge and they pay me a monthly fee.
It's a big moneymaker for nothing, really.
Exactly how I look at it. Although I got to tell you, yesterday they called me, the boiler wouldn't start. And in the 13 years that I've been there, it's happened like 4 or 5 times. And I wish they handled it a little better than call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. But we got through it.
Good.
Couple things. All right. And before I let you go here, has anybody ever heard of a dual pressure control on a boiler?
Heard of it.
Okay. A dual pressure control allows the boiler to operate as a high pressure boiler during parts of the week or day, and then as a low pressure boiler at night or on weekends. All right. Places like New Hampshire allow that. All right. The only question I have about this on your test, dual pressure controls are not permitted in Massachusetts. All right. If you do have it, they only allow it in a range of 10%. But for the purpose of the state exam, dual pressure controls are not permitted. That's the best way to remember it. All right. The second thing is low water cutout. Has anybody ever heard that term?
Yep.
What does it mean?
When the boiler level gets to a certain level, it'll take out the burner.
Yep, it shuts the boiler down automatically. Massachusetts law requires that all high pressure boilers have 2 low water cutouts. The question that they ask you on the state exam is, what's the difference between the 2 low water cutouts? The second low water cutout requires a manual reset. All right. In many low water cutouts, if the boiler trips on low water and then the water level gets restored, the boiler will start back up. All right. Massachusetts law says if the second one goes, all right, somebody has to manually reset it. Does that make sense? Someone has to be either in the boiler room or go to the boiler room to do that. And the rest of this stuff we'll cover later on. Right here, just so you get an idea what it looks like, is the application to take the state exam. All right, you'll notice the first time that you take it, you're going to check written exam, and that entitles you to both the written and the oral. If you fail the first oral, then there's provisions for you to take 2 more oral exams without having to start over and take the written exam again. That makes sense? All right. It tells you that fireman is $100 to take the test. All right. But we'll go over this in much more detail. One of the things that kind of creeps people out, I don't know if I have that page, I don't. The second page of this, ask them if they have your permission to use your picture from your driver's license. All right. Most people don't have a problem with that. If you don't select that option, you have to send a picture of yourself in. All right. Did everybody kind of get that? If you live in out of state, like New Hampshire, they can't access New Hampshire's registry. So you have to send in a picture. Usually a passport photo, or you got that picture of you and your mother-in-law hanging around. Just take scissors and cut her out.
Yes.
No, you get the idea. One last thing I want to do, I sent you a homework. I want to just take a quick look at that homework and make sure that I covered everything. This homework will be due Monday. I think we talked about the definition of a boiler.
Yep.
The definition of a pressure vessel.
Yep.
How often are high pressure boilers inspected?
Yep.
Yeah.
The information that's on a certificate of inspection.
Yep.
Which air tanks require inspection?
Yep.
Which refrigeration equipment requires inspection?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
That was the 20 tons, right?
20 tons and over. Very good. We talked about periodic, non-continuous, and continuous attendance.
Yep.
What can you do with a fireman's license?
Yep.
Operate a
Where
boiler.
to find that? What's that, Jeff?
Can operate a boiler under the supervision of an engineer.
The funny thing is, when they ask you this on the oral exam, they want you to say it verbatim as it's written.
Okay.
So what that means is a second-class fireman can operate a boiler or boilers under the engineer or fireman in direct charge thereof. That's how they want it played back for them. All right,
Okay.
you're right. You can do so under the supervision of anybody in charge, but who can appeal the results of a license exam?
Yep.
Any idiot.
Anybody?
Yeah, well put. Actually, what they're looking for is what?
Anyone
Anybody
who's been
aggrieved by
aggrieved
the
by any
decision of a
examiner.
single examiner? Why would your license be suspended or revoked?
You've been found untrustworthy
Incompetent
and
and
incompetent.
untrustworthy.
Exactly right. All right. How many low water cutouts are required on a boiler?
2.
Are dual pressure controls allowed on boilers?
No.
No, not in Massachusetts.
Not in Massachusetts, right? And what information is on the operator's logbook? All right. So that's bottom blow down the water column and glass, manually test the safety valves, look at the fire, make sure ignition is good,
Test
keep
the
the
safety
boiler room clean. All right, you get the idea. You can give me a list of things that you think are on that logbook. All right. And again, the only reason I make you do that is because they're going to ask you which of the following is not on the operator's logbook. But that's it. Homework 1 is due on Monday. Have a nice weekend.
No,
And-
we don't have to email the homework back to you, do we? We're
No,
just
you
gonna
do
go over
not. This isn't 5th grade. I don't collect the homeworks. All right. In fact, what I'll do Monday after we review the homework, I send you the correct answers to all the homework questions. So you have it as a study guide. All right. However, I am going to call on all of yous when we review this. So, again, if you're serious about getting a license, do the homework, and you would have seen those questions and be familiar with them. All right.
So funny thing, I was at work today. I didn't have the books with me, so I started doing that, just using Google to find the answers. I'm like, when I get home, I'll double check my answers. So Google was pretty accurate with the answers.
Excellent. Yeah. In fact, you know what? One of my students, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, made up flashcards for every homework question.
I actually came across his work.
Yeah, and put it on the internet.
Yep.
So if you want to save a step so you don't have to do it yourself, you can actually print them out and cut them up or whatever you got to do to them and have flashcards as a study guide.
If you ever choose to progress into your engineer's license, do not trust Google. There's a lot of false answers on there. You'll have to double and triple check if you cross-reference with Google.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
Google has
mistakes.
really much experience as a boiler operator, but
I was just like a little bit anxious, just going into this as a leap of faith. Just trying to get into it and a little bit nervous about it. That's all.
yeah, just remember that everybody started at the same place you did.
Yep.
All right.
And nobody knows a friggin' thing about this business until you see it. Once you see it, it becomes pretty apparent how stuff works. But we'll go through it and hopefully we'll get you prepared to take the test. Now, everybody understands that Monday's Columbus Day. Since they started with this Indigenous Peoples Day, I hold school, but if it's a big holiday for you, I understand if you can't come. All right. So if Columbus Day is big on your personal holiday list, skip class and you can watch the video. But otherwise, we're having class Monday. Does everybody kind of get that? Obviously, I'm not going to make you come to class on things like Christmas or Thanksgiving, but some of the other holidays are not as important anymore, So that's
How
my
about-
that's my position there.
How about the book? Are we gonna end up using that later on?
Well, the binder, every piece of paper I put on the screen here, you have the exact page in your book. So you can follow along. You can not use the book, but a lot of people find it handy when they're doing the homework. You can find all the answers to the homework questions in the binder. You're talking about the black binder?
No, so this book, so
Big
blurry.
Plant Operation book, 10th
They
edition.
sold you that?
Yeah.
The Bible.
Yeah, yeah, I don't use that. But other, like the Woburn class does use that book, and the Worcester class. I don't read to you out of a book. I try to explain each thing. However, I will say this on defense of that book. You can have that book only and use it as a reference book all the way up to first engineer. So it has a lot of useful information that kind of supplements, if you will, what I teach you. All right. So maybe
But
I don't. What's that?
That wasn't optional though. You had to buy the book
Yeah.
to do the class.
Yeah, well, you understand they're in the business of selling stuff, maybe. But how much did they clip you for the book?
$250.
No, that can't be right.
Yeah, it is
$250. It is.
It's cheaper than a
Yeah.
lot of college books.
In defense of the book, for the new guys, if some of the stuff that Tom's presenting to you, if you read the chapters, it'll bring everything together for you. It'll help you out a lot.
It may clarify things that maybe my explanation wasn't deep enough for you or good enough.
I haven't been through this book specifically, but a lot of these typical books on revolving around the trade, they do well with showing illustrations on, especially for the newer guys, what the water columns, tricoques, all that stuff, and what they look like and stuff like that.
So yeah, you kind of stuck with the book now anyway, but you can use it throughout your career. All right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
let's leave it at that. I got probably 30 versions. What edition are you guys on now? The steam plant operation? Is it the 10th or 11th edition or something?
10.
10.
Yeah. I got editions 1 through 10. The information is there if I need it. You kind of get the idea. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if I know up in Woburn that the instructor actually reads to you out of that book. I don't think that's a good way to teach. I figured you can already read. You can read that stuff anytime. But anyway, have a good weekend.
You as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Hey, did anybody not get the homework? I sent it out on email, so I think everybody got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody has a problem, you can drop me an email and say, hey, I never got it. I'll send it to you.
All right.
All right, have a nice weekend. All right.
Thank you.
Remember, it's the Patriot, the safest bet out there. All right, bye.
Bye.
Right.